everyone. Welcome to another episode of our IFM Talks, a podcast designed to provide you with valuable insights, expert interviews, and practical takeaways, whether you're a seasoned FM professional or an industry enthusiast. This podcast is brought to you by InfraSpeak and the IFM community, which already has more than 800 members worldwide. If you'd like to know more and join, visit us at theintelligenceformaintenance.com. It's free and will ever be. In this episode, we will delve into the world of facilities management in the context of the hybrid workplace. In today's fast changing landscape, the way we work is undergoing a profound transformation. The hybrid workplace, characterized by a blend of remote and in office work, is no longer just a buzzword, it's actually a reality. With this shift comes a set of unique challenges. But first, let's start with the introductions. I'm your host, Liliana, and I'm excited to have on this journey with me Bernard Crouch as our guest today. Hello, Bernard. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to start. I am very happy to have you here with us. Okay, so thank you so much for your time. And for those who don't know Bernard, he has been in the FM and workplace sector for over 30 years and as a consultant for the last 16 years. He has been working with a high range of clients in different sectors and countries, and he's also an FM tutor and actively volunteer with several associations like IWFM. So, Bernard, can you tell me a bit more about yourself and your work at Common FM?
Yes. So 16 years ago, I decided to set up my own FM and workplace consultancy. And I guess what I wanted to do was bring my experience and knowledge to bear with clients. So, for instance, last year I was working with EA, Electronic Arts, and that was to let some contracts where they had in-house teams, and we were bringing that out to the market and introducing contractors into those sites. Quite a difficult journey, with 2P being a big part of the negotiations, making sure that all those people who transferred over still got the same benefits and packages and so on. This year I've been working with Porsche, the car company, and they have a variety of different contractors that they work with for different locations, providing various services. And so I've been working with them to deliver, retender and deliver get new contractors, or perhaps get the existing contractor back in. And some of the things they've been looking at, especially of late, has been biodiversity. And obviously, there's also, in conjunction with that, improvements in their sustainability at their sites, and at the same time, still looking to deliver cost-effective services. So I guess there can be a perception with big, well-known names that they've got a big pot of money, and that's not necessarily the case. And so they will still be looking to make sure that what they're getting is cost effective.
That's big names and big challenges, basically, on a
Yes.
sentence. So yeah, that's actually very funny because even when a company has some money to spend, we never want to spend it. So cost effective is always a priority for all of us. Very good. Okay, and to break the ice a little bit, Bernard, what would you say that it's your best work-related story after 30 years working in the sector?
So I was working with a building in the City of London, multi-tenanted building, and I was there as an interim contract manager. So as a consultant, I get asked to go in sometimes, not really wearing the consultancy hat, more of a just covering for somebody who's maybe away for a couple of weeks or something. So I was in there as the interim contract manager, and I came in one morning and the client phoned me and said that the FM who I reported to had called in sick. So could I cover for the FM as well? This is the password for his PC. And so I ran up to his office, opened up his emails, and then I started emailing myself as the contract manager, chasing different jobs. Then I ran downstairs and replied more or less along the lines, I'm having a very busy day today. And so it might take me a little bit of time to get back to you.
Oh my
So,
God.
so for that day, I was both the client and the contractor, and I was exchanging emails between myself for the whole day.
It was definitely worth it. Very good. Okay, that's definitely multitasking. So very good story to share. Like I every time I talk to new people in the FM sector, we always have these funny stories. So it's definitely a sector in which you have a lot of things happening, a lot of problems to solve. So you end up like with a bunch of good things to tell. Very good. Okay, so let's start with our first question. As I was saying in the beginning, we will be discussing hybrid workplace today. And I have been exploring a little bit your background and your LinkedIn as well. We also know each other for a while now, so we have had some conversations. And I know that you have a lot of experience in implementing change within organizations. We were just talking about it. And one of the biggest changes to the workplace in recent years has been the pandemic. I think we are all a bit tired sometimes of actually discussing the pandemic, but it's true that for the FM sector, it changed a lot of things. So, in your opinion, after this big change, what are the biggest challenges for facility managers of having hybrid workplaces today?
So the biggest challenge really is if you look at it from the perspective of cost, the organizations post-pandemic have suddenly realized that their occupancy levels are typically quite low. Now, before the pandemic, I'd measure occupancy levels typically at around about between, say, 55 to 65% on average. And it's clearly gone down since then. And this has suddenly become quite an issue. So organizations are saying, well, we have these buildings and we are getting maybe 40% occupancy. We're maybe looking at scenarios where it's very low on a Monday and a Friday, and we're paying a lot of money to be in a high-end space in a centre of town, perhaps, or on a business park. And here we are spending all this money, and it's not really, financially, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the return on investment isn't very good. And I'll come back to this later, but I mean, there's clearly a number of organisations who are very, really tuned into this and said, well, this is something we've got to deal with. So for the facility manager or the workplace manager, you've now got that challenge where the business is saying, well, we're successful, we're making money, but we don't really think we should be spending as much on our workplace because there's nobody here on a Monday and a Friday. But they still want it to be a great place. Conversely, they still want it to be a very great place for people to come in. And some of the initiatives that have been taking place include things like maybe offering a free breakfast, or maybe the coffee that they used to charge a minimum amount is now a free then. Various things like that, where there'll be some sort of, let's try and entice people back into the office. We're not forcing them to come back, but we'll just give them some little incentives. And at the same time, try and make the office more of a go-to destination. So let's improve the quality. Let's give some great breakout spaces, a bigger variety of styles of workspace, some quiet workspaces. You've got some small meeting places, lots and lots of variety mixed in to make it as enticing as possible. And as I say, at the same time, we might be cutting your budget because we don't, a lot of people working from home. So why would we spend so much on the office? But we still want to make it a more attractive place for our staff to come into. And coupled to that, obviously, is the attraction and retention of staff. So if I were back in the workplace and I was, I don't know, in my 30s or something, if I was changing my job, do I want to go somewhere where they're forcing me to come in 9 to 5 days a week, and I have some sort of horrible commute on the metro or whatever, or do I say, well, actually, it's a job where I get to work from home and go in when I want. So there's that whole dynamic of what do organisations do? Do they enforce you're in the office, or do they give the hybrid option, which seems to be certainly more attractive for the type of, particularly type of staff where you're up higher up the pay scale, and you're doing a knowledge-based job. You're going to opt for the hybrid one in most cases.
Okay, this leads me to two concepts that I would like to discuss with you, which is first, team's expectations, so people's expectations, which I think is one of the topics related to hybrid workplace for sure. And the second thing is cost. So I have been hearing some stories, reading some things. You were just mentioning that as a hybrid workplace been an excuse to cut down on FM costs, and does it make sense for you in the end?
I'm obviously going to say it doesn't make sense
Good.
because I've just described that we can't really do more with less. We need to have the sufficient budget to deliver. And a good example of that would be that during lockdown, a lot of organisations increased their cleaning expenditure. So when I say lockdown, I mean probably the second lockdown, when people returned to the workplace. And when they came in, there would be additional hand sanitizing, there'd be some additional daytime staff, meeting rooms would be cleaned after each meeting very thoroughly, there'd be a lot of surface cleaning going on. And that's what I've seen, that there was that increase level. And then staff who are now coming into the office are now used to seeing that additional daytime cleaning that perhaps didn't exist before, and having that extra sort of level of confidence that everywhere is very, very clean. So it's a little bit hard to then say, well, actually, we can't keep affording to do that, especially because you're not here some other days of the week. So we've got to kind of cut the costs. So it's trying to get that balance, isn't it? It's trying to balance between how much is the expenditure, and then can we justify that? And at the same time, we want staff to feel we care about their well-being. Well-being is a big buzzword these days, and so therefore we need to make sure that when they come in, they do feel confident that the workplace is cleaned and sanitized thoroughly, and they feel comfortable. And let's face it, I've always been a big advocate of daytime cleaning, and I've seen what's happened in the Nordics, in the Scandinavian countries. It's a big thing over there. And the cleaner will come around while you're sat at your desk and quietly clean away. Some other countries, we've been a little bit more resistant to that. And I actually think that's a good thing for a number of reasons. You get a better quality of cleaner. They're more likely to stay in the job. They get to know the staff that are in the buildings, and
They're part of the team.
They're part of the team. Yeah, that's exactly that. They're part of the team, and things get resolved very quickly. So I'd like to see that continue, but the challenge is, and I've had this with anecdotally, I've not had it directly with clients, but I've had it anecdotally where contractors have said to me they've been asked to provide thorough cleaning Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or very full-on catering Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but nothing on or a much lesser offering on a Monday and a Friday. And the big problem there is obviously that from a contractor's perspective, you're going to employ people for 5 days a week. People expect to be paid for 5 days a week, and it's quite hard to find people who are prepared to just work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And how would you achieve that? So I think that's a big challenge for the industry, for the sector at the moment. How do we deliver top quality services, perhaps on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then a lesser amount of service on a Monday and a Friday? Is that actually doable? And certainly in the UK, I can't speak for every other country, but in the UK we have a distinct shortage of staff. So it's very hard to go out and find cleaning staff, chefs, engineers, security staff. You just name whatever sector it is, or whatever job title it is, and it's quite hard to find those people. So you really want to be offering them a five day a week, well paid post. And if you're offering 3 days a week or some sort of mix and match, or we'll call you when we need you scenario, is less
Won't
likely.
work.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and it's harder to find the people and less likely to retain them, because if they take that job and then in a month's time they find a good solid 5 day a week job, they're going to quit and go off and do that. So
Definitely.
there is that challenge, and I'm guessing that probably applies in most countries. I think post-pandemic, it's been a lot harder to recruit people into the FM industry.
Yeah, you were mentioning a lot people and teams' expectations and everything, and this happens very often in conversations that we have. So usually your focus is always about people, even though in the FM we always talk a lot about assets as well. But I think that the focus should actually be people nowadays. So how do we keep managing all these expectations, all the the changes with the teams in in this hybrid context?
Are you referring to the teams that are delivering the services into the buildings?
I would say both actually. So teams delivering the services, but also teams working in offices, right? And I also add one question related to this for you, which is the fact that how can we actually provide the same level of experience when they're at home and when they are at the office? But I think
Okay.
it's even more than that. Like, how do we manage all the expectations regarding like going to the office, having like a specific kind of experience, but then making sure that we are being cost effective because people are not going every day? So how can we manage all of these people issues?
So I think we have to work quite closely with both HR and IT, and that's always been something I've been very keen to do. And I don't like the silo idea where HR are deciding something or IT are deciding something, and it's and FM aren't part of that discussion, or not included in that. And it's
Hmm.
very obvious now that if you're saying to somebody, we expect you to work from home either full time or even just 2 or 3 days a week, then ideally you need to give them really good quality IT support. That's really important. And at the same time, they need a certain level of HR support as well. Obviously, different organizations have different approaches to this. And I know some organizations where they will give the employee a budget, and the employee typically goes to IKEA and buys a desk and a chair. That's not personally what I'd recommend, but and maybe a laptop as well. But other organizations will say, maybe here's a laptop. This is the software we're going to get you to use, and sort yourself out. We do need to be careful about this. And I had a case last year where I worked with a client who had a potential court case in France, because they have some legislation in France called DUERP. DUERP is a piece of legislation where every organization has to do a risk assessment for the home workplace. And this particular company, who weren't French,
Okay.
hadn't done that, didn't know about it, hadn't done it. And so I very quickly worked with them to put in place both the policy and the risk assessment, and get that risk assessment sent out to all of their home working employees, or hybrid employees who had a home office set up, and get them to do the risk assessment and get it back into the
Wow.
organization.
I had
Um,
no idea that there was even a reality, to be honest, that, there are countries in which you need to actually do a risk assessment for the home office. That's huge. Okay.
so UK and other European countries quite often have a recommendation that you do that, but it's
Mhm.
not actually a piece of legislation to say that you have to
Exactly.
do it. It does vary. It's not a Europe-wide. There's no commonality. It varies from country to country.
Mhm.
So my personal approach would be to always say, number one, you send an online workplace risk assessment to every employee. They have to complete that and return it. And if they come back and say, well, I sit in the kitchen on a stool or whatever, then the organisation needs to ensure that that person actually has a proper office chair and has a proper setup, especially if they're going to be working at home typically 8 hours a day, several days a week. So otherwise, what will happen is there will be court cases where somebody comes back and says, the reason I've got a back problem, or the reason I've got eye strain, or the reason I've got whatever is because of this. And coupled with that is also security, so cyber security and so on. And it concerns me that quite often we've got people working from home, and we don't necessarily know what level of security have they got. And a neighbour could be gaining access to their Wi-Fi, or even they might be printing things off and then just sticking it in the recycling bin. So there's a whole scenario around security of making sure that if people are hybrid working, that's covered off. And that's not just the home, obviously, as well, because if you pop out to the coffee shop, which I like to do, I'm working from home, I get a bit fed up after a while, and it's 3 o'clock, and I think I'll grab my laptop and I'll go and sit in the coffee shop for an hour and just work on this report. And I'm logging onto the Wi-Fi there. Is it secure? Am I putting anything at risk? And so that's another thing that working with IT and HR, we need to make sure that people are actually working properly and everything's secure. And yeah, we just cover all of those items off from a hybrid working perspective.
There's a lot to consider. I think that people outside of the FM perspective don't even have an idea of what we are dealing with. Like, you always think about hybrid workplace. It doesn't matter. It's just about flexibility. Like, I can work from anywhere. But then there are all these kind of questions that people don't actually consider when making that decision. It's a huge topic. A lot of these things, I think only now we are talking about those, because
Yeah.
only now we are facing these questions. So yeah, it's definitely, even though it's not a new thing, it's definitely a new thing, because there are a lot of companies that were not used to the hybrid workplace at all. So only now that it's becoming like generalized, I would say, is that we are dealing with these kind of challenges. Okay. Heavy topic. We will come back to that in a bit, but I would like to do like a quick break on the questions and play a game with you, Bernard. Basically, to give context to the people listening to us, I invited Bernard to bring one of his favorite drinks to this conversation. For example, I have a glass of sparkling water with a lemon zest and a slice of orange. So this is what I like to drink in the morning. But also because it's not time for mojitos. What drink did you bring, Bernard, and why?
Flat white, and a few years ago when flat white was, I don't think I'd really heard of it. I was working with a tech company, and everyone was going out and buying flat white, and I tried it, and I've been drinking. I have to have a couple of flat whites every day, and then if it were 6 o'clock now, in fact today I'm meeting with some FM colleagues, and we'll probably drink some craft beer. That would be the choice later on.
I like your choices, both the flat white and the craft beer. Huge fan of those. Okay, perfect. So, how will this game work? Basically, I will say a set list of words related to the hybrid workplace topic. Okay. And you will tell me if we should toast to each one of them or not. Okay. And you can give like a simple explanation. So, why would you toast to those or not? Okay. So, let's start. The first word is workspace optimization.
Workspace optimization. I'm not going to toast to that, and here's why. Um, this is something that we should have, we ought to have been doing. We should have been doing for years. I was doing workspace optimization in the 1990s, and then I would find a ridiculous sort of thing where somebody had put the sales or marketing team next to the accounts department in an open plan space, some sort of scenario like that. So the noisy team next to the quiet team, and they'd be very unhappy with each other. And so workspace optimization, it really is something that we should for a long time already have been doing. So I'm not going to say cheers to it. I just think it's such an obvious one. The challenge that we face, quite a lot of my clients nowadays don't have allocated desks, so therefore, that's gone out of the window, isn't it? So three or four people from the accounts department who like to work very quietly and don't make any noise have come in. They might be sat next to the marketing team who are getting very excited about the new company logo, or some campaign that they've come up with, which is going to be amazing. So that is a challenge, and I appreciate that people get quite upset about workplace noise. That's one of the things that working from home, for most of us, if you don't have small children or a very demanding pets or
Hmm.
similar, or maybe building work going on next door, that's happened as well. That can be quite frustrating. But if you've got a
Yep.
nice quiet home environment, going into the office and having a noisy team wherever you're sat is a problem. But workspace optimization, yeah, as I say, I think it's impossible to do if you've got a completely flexible workplace where there's no allocated desks, which I think is great from a hybrid perspective, because you just turn up and find a desk, and you no
Hmm.
longer take ownership of a desk, and you don't have your cactus and your picture of your children, or whatever it is you like to, your fluffy toy. People like to decorate desks and so on. That's gone. Um, but yeah, so not a cheers for that.
Okay, deal. Let's see the next one. Hybrid work policy.
Well, I'm going to say no cheers for this one, believe it or not, because clearly we should all, going back to 2020 as 2-3 years ago, we should have already adopted this, even before then. I mean, before we actually hit any sort of pandemic, good company policies should have, before COVID came along, a policy for dealing with pandemics. And the policy for dealing with pandemics wouldn't be what the government tells you to do at that point. It would actually be, we're going to ask you from tomorrow or whatever, for this reason, to work in a hybrid fashion from home, or perhaps somewhere else. And obviously, it's not just pandemics. So if there's some sort of terrorist alert, or some of the issues that we've seen around the world in the last few days, where
Hmm.
perhaps somebody might be 50 kilometers from the office, and the office is now closed because it's flooded, or there's been a hurricane or whatever, then you've already got that policy in place to say, uh, we've got the whole arrangement for you to work from somewhere else. So you've got the IT set up, you're working from a laptop. Maybe you're at home, maybe you've gone to a hotel, or a different office in a different part of the country. So again, I'm going to not say cheers, because everybody should have a hybrid workplace policy anyway.
Very good. And let's see if it's the next one. Hybrid team dynamics.
Well, so believe it or not, it's three in a row where I'm not going to say cheers. I'm going to say cheers eventually. Don't worry.
I love it. I love
I'm
it.
not. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be a complete party pooper. Hybrid team dynamics. Yeah, I mentioned earlier on about, so from an FM perspective, I mentioned earlier on about working with HR and working with IT, and then I'm often working with legal. That comes up a lot. And the reality is, so I'm obviously outside of the loop to some degree, but I'm going into an organization, and I've got the head of FM. I've got somebody who's probably not the head of IT, but they're in the IT department. I've got legal. I've got HR. I may well have marketing as well. They quite often get involved at some point, and they all report to a different. They're more often than not, they're going to report to a different person in the C-suite. So how are we ever going to create hybrid team dynamics in true sense? So I've got a question mark there. It's a great idea. It's a great concept. I like it, but I'm not really sure if that
Hmm.
ever fully comes off. And I recognize that sometimes there are going to be challenges where there's a bit of friction between some of those different departments for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Finance could be one of them, where talking to finance and they disagree with what they think FM or IT are doing, etc. So yeah, that's no cheers for that one.
Well, no pressure, because I like the fact that you only cheer when it's really, a big thing. So no pressure on cheering. I'm launching the next one. So workplace technology.
So workplace technology, I'm not going to say no cheers, and I'm also not going to say cheers either. I'm like this on this one. I'm half and half.
Okay.
I'm half cheers and half not cheers. And my reason is, one of the challenges we have with workplace technology, and there's a few famous business people who would probably argue this with me, but or with anyone who suggests this.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges with workplace technology is we're giving people a 24/7, 365, always contactable scenario. So you give somebody a smartphone and you give them a laptop, and theoretically they could get a call at midnight, they could get a call on a Sunday evening, they could get a call on a Saturday afternoon. It's an always on scenario. I had a call from a colleague who was at the rugby in France the other day, and I think I tempted to say to him, "You shouldn't be calling me from the rugby. That's you've gone to enjoy some sport in another country. Call me when you get back." And it's
Exactly.
that sort of thing where I think we're at risk of being always on, and I think from a well-being perspective, that's not good. And the second part to that is workplace monitoring. I was very heavily involved in that in the early days when we were planting sensors on desks, underneath desks, and in the corner of the room, in the corner of the office space. And quite often staff were quite uncomfortable about this. Are you monitoring how long I go to have a cigarette break or a toilet break, or how long it takes for lunch, or etc., etc. And obviously they could still be working because they've maybe gone and got a coffee and they're having a chat with a colleague about a project or something. We were actually monitoring the amount of, not them specifically, we were monitoring the amount of time that desk is in use. Sorry. So we were actually trying to maximize the use of desks, especially ones that were unallocated. So
Mm-hmm.
people come in and they use a touchdown desk, or how you want to describe that type of desk, and we were monitoring that. So again, there's a lot of nervousness about that. How far are we going with the monitoring? Unfortunately, and the other one is like the keystroke thing, isn't it? So I've heard of where you can download an app to show that your mouse is active, when in fact you've disappeared to, I don't know, play golf or from your home.
Oh my God.
Your home office. The boss believes you're working because there's some activity going on, but actually it's just an app that's delivering your activity. So people find ways around these things, don't they?
Of course.
I'm still saying that from a workplace technology point, those are the bad things. Then the good things are that actually, yes, we deliver really, really good quality software, and maybe hardware as well, to staff that are hybrid working. That's a good thing. And if somebody wants to complete a spreadsheet at 1 a.m. or in the middle of a Sunday afternoon because they they had a school meeting with teachers or something during the week, then I don't think that ought not to be a problem. So I've got really mixed feelings about workplace technology. I think it's it's obviously great that we can have Zoom and Teams calls. What a fantastic thing. I don't spend as much time as I used to in my car racing up the motorway to go and see somebody for an hour and then race back again. It's good for the environment and it's good for us personally. I would just say I normally try and get the train, but we don't have, I can't actually physically get the train to all of my clients. So if they're in a city centre, I'll go on the train, and if they're not, then unfortunately I have to drive.
You definitely, yeah.
But workplace technology is a big help, and I currently have Thursdays like my Teams calls day. So on a Thursday, I've got all these Teams calls lined up, and I'm just sat and I'm connecting with people and talking to them on Teams. Although I do feel that Teams and Zoom are still the early stages, if you like. I'm confident that somebody in probably in San Francisco is going to come up with something a lot better in the very near future, and
Mm-hmm.
it will enable us to connect in a better way. I just feel with those calls that it's not quite the same as actually the face to face. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking forward
Agreed.
to the next iteration.
Very good. And the next one is remote work integration.
Okay, I'm going to give this a yes. Cheers for this.
Wow. Cheers.
Let's drink some of my cold that way. Yes, so I do like this, and I like the idea that I'll be working on something, and there's somebody who's in Germany, there's someone else who's perhaps in LA, there's somebody maybe in Singapore. Not always difficult to get the timing of those calls quite right, but I think it's great that we can have that sort of integration of people in various locations. And
Mm-hmm.
again, geographically, where there might have been a lot more international flights taking place, we can have that. We can have those regular conversations and work with those people, and just jump on a. That's a regular thing for me now. I'm jumping on a Teams call with somebody who's a long way away, who previously would have been, well, does one of us travel to meet the other? Do we meet in a mutually agreeable spot? We don't actually need to do that. So yeah, I think remote work integration is really good.
It's really, really good. Especially for companies working globally, right? So nowadays you can
Yes.
actually connect without only the annual retreats in which you gather everyone. So it's great.
So I just briefly on that, a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
pre-pandemic, I did an international health and safety training session with
Mm-hmm.
an international client, and they'd flown people in from the States, from Japan, from China, etc. And we all gathered at a hotel in London, and I had a really good session with them. Um, I think it's hard to replicate that type of environment, but theoretically, we could actually just do that on a
Yeah.
Teams or a Zoom call. And next month, I'm doing a day's tutorial for, funny enough, for space planning, going back to what we were talking about earlier, and how the office space is planned. And that will be on Teams, and those
Mm-hmm.
people will all be remote. And I will miss that point where we have a little chit chat over lunch or over a coffee, but it's doable, and they don't all have to travel to one venue where we all spend the day.
Exactly. And lose, like, for example, 3 days of work because of that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and
yeah.
maybe travel the day before, stay in a
Yeah,
hotel, be a bit jet lagged, etc., etc. Yeah.
definitely. Okay. The next one, very connected to the technology that we were talking about, data driven decision making.
It's a yes. It's a cheers.
Cheers. Wow. Cheers to
So
that.
Google have been doing some of this. So they're collecting lots and lots of, as you would imagine, data about their teams, their people, and then they're using that to find solutions to improve things. So they're using it for well-being purposes. They're using it for the health of their staff. So they can see when somebody is maybe putting in too many hours. I did an anecdote here. I did a workplace risk assessment with a client I was working with, and this person had complained about feeling stressed, having headaches, and was concerned that the lighting at their workstation wasn't good, and that maybe there was something wrong with their office chair, maybe there was something wrong with the desk. Didn't really know. Just there's some sort of problem here. It needs addressing. And I sat down with this person, and I've looked at the lighting. I've looked at the distance between them and their PC, the height of their desk, how their chairs adjusted, the blinds on the window. I've looked at absolutely everything, and I couldn't find a single thing wrong. Everything was actually fine. And then I said, so do you ever take any work home? Well, yes, I do. And sometimes I'll be working until midnight at home. And sometimes going back to what I said earlier, sometimes I get emails at like 11:30, and I might just be about to go to bed, or it might be a Saturday evening or something, and I see something come in, and I can't. I'm one of those people who I can't actually ignore that. I feel I've got to read it and reply to it straight away. And I said, fine, okay, well, I've done your workplace risk assessment. I'm going to write a report and take it to your boss. I went to that person's boss and I said, um, we need to talk to IT. We need to. I recommend a lock on this person's emails and business phone, so that they can't receive anything after, say, 6 p.m. and across the weekend. We've got to stop them working at midnight and on a Sunday evening and so on. And that's the big problem. They're stressed, they're getting headaches, they're working when they shouldn't be, they're doing far more hours than they should. People shouldn't be phoning them or emailing them across the weekend or late at night or whatever. I'm going to put my hands up and say, unfortunately, I do that. I don't phone people, but it's like 11 o'clock in the evening. I'm just about to go to bed.
Yeah,
I needed
I
to send that
forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah. I needed to send Liliana that email. And if I don't do it now, I'll forget about it. What I try to do is just write the email and leave it in my outbox and then click send in the morning. But sometimes I just think, I'm going to send it anyway. And I might even add, please don't reply to this immediately.
Yeah,
But
I'm the same actually. So I totally feel you, because sometimes, like, when you relax is when you remember things,
yes,
smaller things that you were supposed to do along the day, and then big things came up and you ended up forgetting. So it's like, okay, now I need to go back and better do it now, otherwise I will forget again. So I totally feel you on that one.
yeah. So that's my guess on data-driven decision making. It's going to. Well, I think we can come back to that later, but there's definitely going to be more of that, and I think it's a good thing.
Definitely. And I'm going to jump one and then I will come back afterwards, because this one is very connected to what you were saying, which is employee well being.
So I'm very disappointed by some of the well-known figures who, Elon Musk springs to mind, but there are others out there who have especially IT tech companies in the States, don't really get why they're really, really pushing hard for people to be in the workplace every day. When I follow the stats very carefully, and by and large, most people work harder at home, or hybrid working, so they choose to go in on certain days. But when you're working from home, what typically will happen is you'll start work at the time you would have left home and finish at the time you would have got back. So if that's an hour commute either end, you put in 2 extra hours. Now, if you then take a very long lunch and take the dog for a walk, the organization hasn't actually lost anything. They're still ahead on that. And you're less likely to have the at desk disruptions, which I personally, from an FM point of view, I welcome that. I like people to come. If I'm in a building and someone comes to my desk and asks for something, it's fine. I'm happy with that. But for many roles that you might be doing in the workplace, that's just a disruption, and it's going to stop you and distract you from what you were actually doing. And now you've got to try and get back into a document or a spreadsheet or something, and time has been wasted. Yeah, well-being, realistically, we need to. I mentioned earlier about attracting and retaining talent in organisations, and that's really important. And I suggest that we have younger generations coming up who have far higher expectations than, say, boomers like myself. And when they come into the workplace, they expect a lot more. They expect a really good quality cup of coffee, not just some cheap instant and a kettle. They expect to have good quality office furniture, fully adjustable chairs, sit-stand desks, really good breakout spaces, perhaps an on-site gym, somewhere to park if they cycle in, somewhere to secure to park their bike, and a shower where they can get a shower, and some very good quality catering, some good quality food during the day without having to go out. And all of that then goes back to the well-being. I mentioned what Google are doing earlier on,
Mm-hmm.
and they're analysing all this sort of thing. And what have they eaten for lunch? And how many coffees have they had? And did they have 2 ice creams after the lunch? And are they eating too much? Are they getting the right level of calories? All that type of thing, which is about your well-being. And there is a little bit of intrusiveness in that, but I also think it's quite good. And to be honest, most of us are not very good at managing ourselves in that respect, are we? I'm very tempted to go out and get a bar of chocolate or something when I should be eating fruit or whatever. So I do think that the employee wellbeing bit and having the on-site gym and encouraging people to use that and encouraging people to cycle in if that's feasible. I've been cycling a lot in central London this summer
Mm-hmm.
to meetings and events, and it's entirely doable and a lot healthier. So yeah, that's something I think is really good, and I'm disappointed that some organisations don't take well-being. They might use the word, but don't really take it as
Seriously.
seriously as they
Mm-hmm.
might. Mental health ties into that in a big way, and making sure that people are not overloaded with work and not overstressed, and that they are they have the right support and the right levels of support, and they aren't put under undue pressure. I think I've worked in the past with managers who like to set unrealistic deadlines, and you're working all the hours you can. You can't sleep properly. You're worried that when you have your annual review, you're going to come out of it badly because you maybe struggled to hit that deadline or you didn't do a very good job. I think we need to, that style of management. It'd be good if that was less of that and more realistic deadline setting and so on. It's not healthy, but by the same token, we need to have some stress. We do need stress. Is not always a bad thing. We need some stress in
Mm-hmm.
life, and I fit in that category as well. If I've got 5 days to do 1 day's work, I'll probably end up doing most of it on Friday, which which I try to sort of push myself to say no, do it on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then
Mm-hmm.
you won't be rushing yourself on Friday. So yeah, and we're all different characters, aren't we? So
Definitely.
some people will thrive on that tight deadline. Some will be overstressed on it, and so managers need to work with and understand
And
their
adapt.
teams and adapt. Yeah. So whenever I'm managing a team, I always try to look for their strengths, play on their
Mm-hmm.
strengths, and if they've got a weakness, then I'll look for a workaround of that weakness. Can
Perfect.
I find a way to make sure that I don't exaggerate the weakness and let's play to their strengths.
So are we toasting to employing
Yeah, we
well-being?
are. Yeah,
We
here we
are
go.
toasting. Well done. Very good. And now my last question, which will be related to the questions that I have for you afterwards, or my last word actually, which is digital transformation.
It's a yes from me.
Nice.
How
Toast
long?
to that.
30, 30 years in FM. And in my very first job, I remember working with Lotus Notes before we had Microsoft. And then along the way, I've worked with all sorts of different software. I've been through the tough scenario of issuing engineers with handheld devices that would mysteriously fall into water tanks and will get crushed because they'd accidentally left it somewhere they shouldn't, probably on purpose. And I just think there's so much FM can do with in the digital age. We've been rather slow to adopt, and there are all sorts of reasons for that. But definitely, we need to up our game and get with it. So
Amazing.
here's.
Cheers to that. Okay, very well done. Thank you so much. Now we are adding back to our questions. And actually, my next two questions are pretty much related to this technology part that we have been discussing and the digital transformation part, but also a piece that you mentioned in the beginning, which is sustainability. Okay. So I know that you have been having a lot of projects related to sustainability. So I wanted to understand, um, how do you think that the hybrid workplace can affect a company's sustainability goals?
I would say this is quite a hard question to answer. So,
It's not something that we relate very often, to
yeah,
be
so
honest.
the challenge is if I took so someone I know who lives about 48 kilometers away from their office in London, and I was talking to them recently, and they said how great hybrid working is because it's a long drive. There's not a train option for this person. Um, well, they might be sort of part drive and then get a train, but realistically, they're going to drive that journey and back. Now, if we look from a sustainability point of view, the amount of emissions from their car, and even though we now have very strict emissions, we have a ULEZ zone for the whole of London, which means you can't drive, well, you can pay £12.50 to come in if you're driving a polluting diesel or older petrol vehicle. I'm going to assume that that's not the case for her, but nonetheless, you're driving a petrol car all those kilometres there and back. That's quite high emissions. Conversely, you could have then, say, me, for instance, and I live zone 3 in London, so I'm not too far from the centre, but I'd be commuting on the train or the tube. And if I was at home in the winter, I'd be putting the heating on. And that's where the problem comes in, because it's a lot more sustainable to heat and cool an office building for 300 people than it is to have 300 people sat at home with their independent heating, light and gas on. So it's a very difficult one to answer. If you've got people doing a very long commute and perhaps driving in, then it's better for them to be working primarily from home.
Hmm.
And if you've got people who have got a short commute and they're using public transport or maybe cycling or whatever, then they're better in the office. Really hard to answer, isn't it? And I suppose coupled to that, if you're then in the office and then you go out for lunch and you go out and buy takeaway coffees, that's less sustainable. Yeah, I
It
find it
depends
very,
a lot. Yeah.
it really depends. And I am, I do know people in the UK who have a really, really long commute. And sometimes that's by train and sometimes it's by car.
Hmm.
People who live in Brighton on the south coast who would be commuting into London every day, and they found the drive was really quite tough. But sometimes they would drive in. Maybe school holidays. I'll drive in school holidays. There's less traffic,
Hmm.
but otherwise get the train. It's a tough one to answer. If you compare that to the colleague who lives nearby, great that they're in the office. That's more sustainable. The person who lives further away, less sustainable.
Hmm. Okay, well done.
So I'm sorry I couldn't really answer that one very well.
No, 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 but it is something that maybe along the way we will, think about in more detail. But definitely nowadays is not easy to actually answer. Okay, so we are moving towards the end of our conversation, and I would like to end looking at the future. Okay, so I would like to know your opinion on how technology and particularly AI can help FMers in the hybrid workplace, and how do you think it's impacting the digitalization of the FM sector?
Well, I guess the future is both you and I will be replaced by AI. So I'm joking. Hopefully. Um,
Hopefully, yes.
yeah. So I guess I've got sort of three things that I'm thinking here. So AI can take data from sensors. So if we start to put sensors, we use IoT, we put sensors, which I mentioned some earlier for occupancy. AI can then take also weather forecasts. It can take predictions of some of the things I mentioned, like possibly potential hurricanes or typhoons or extreme weather conditions. And then it leverages all of that data and starts to reduce the energy costs. So AI can decide whether the building should be heated or cooled, or neither, perhaps, depending on all of the data that it's collated. And certainly in the UK this summer, we've typically had days where you get up in the morning and it's t-shirt and shorts, and then by lunchtime you need a coat or a jumper, and then maybe by 5 o'clock you need to be back in the t-shirt and shorts. And typical office buildings are really not geared for that at all. They're just we typically sort of heat the buildings in for most of the winter months and then cool them in the summer months, and we're not really able to adapt that. It'd be great to say we can make some energy savings by saying, well, AI has already forecast what's going to happen today, and we know it's going to be an unusually cool day today, and we're going to cut the aircon, or it's going to suddenly get very hot, and we weren't going to have the aircon on, but just adjusting accordingly so that we can measure that and make some savings. And AI-enabled sensors can also pick up on equipment issues, so we can start to predict when something's going to fail. And rather than it failing and then we have an issue, we get the engineer to go and work on that equipment in advance. And obviously then we hopefully start to make some savings in terms of engineering costs, because we're predicting the failure rather than having the failure and then having to resolve that failure. And that can work right down to UPS and generators and so on, where we can be ahead of the curve and make sure a lot of incidents don't actually occur. And I guess a couple of other things with AI is I mentioned earlier about sensors on desks. Well, we can really start to have some really serious data that AI analyzes in terms of occupancy across days and weeks in the office, in the workplace, and then we can adjust the temperature, the air quality, and water, and so on, and start to make sure that we're really making sure that water quality and air quality is where it should be, based on the hybrid working style and a very adaptable office. And then coupled to that is the space usage bit. So technically an organization could say, right, we've got 6 floors, and AI has determined we only need 3 floors open Monday and Friday. And so we just cut the services to the other floors. We don't run the aircon or anything in those floors on a Monday and Friday, and all staff are directed to just utilize the remaining floors. So there's a lot of benefits that AI can deliver.
Amazing. Okay, I think we're just in the beginning, so there are a few things that probably we won't even we can't even imagine that will exist at some point. So it's curious because we will be able to see it in a few years. Let's see how that goes. Okay, we have been talking for I don't know, maybe 40 minutes.
Okay.
I kind of lost track of time, which is great, and I'm pretty sure that it's much to say about this still, but unfortunately, our time is limited, and people listening probably don't have unlimited time as
Unlimited
well.
time.
Exactly. Unfortunately, because we could keep for hours. So to go back to our initial question and the motto of this episode, so basically the title that we gave to this episode, what do you think, Bernard? Is FM in the workplace or FM in the hybrid workplace flexible too?
Yes, I think it is. I think FM still has a role to play with people who are working on a hybrid basis, and that's working in, as I said before, in conjunction with IT and HR to ensure that those people are properly equipped and their well-being and their health and safety has been considered, and we're not, as I mentioned before, dealing with court cases where people have gone to work from home and they're spending their day on a sofa and ending up with back problems with a laptop balanced on their knees, which we really need to. Marketing are very bad at that. That's something I see a lot. Marketing, not in FM, but outside. Home working, and they show someone sat on a beach with a laptop or sat up in bed or on the sofa, and it's a bad image because that's really what we shouldn't be doing, and we should have proper equipment if we're going to be sat at home for 8 hours a day, and we should still encourage people to take breaks from their desk. So if you sit for, this thing about sitting on a plane for 8 or 10 hours, and it's actually quite bad for you because your body is not getting proper circulation, your legs aren't getting circulation. So that's certainly something we can deal with in the home workspace, is to a little app or a bit of software which just says you've been sat at your desk for 3 hours now. Go and make a cup of coffee, or get your sparkling water, or take the dog for, if you've got a dog.
I actually had an app to send to say like, go have a glass of water,
Right, good.
because I drink
drink more
very
water.
little water.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't drink enough water as well. So it's drinking more water, and it's getting to move around and not be in a static position for hours on end, working on a laptop.
Yeah, definitely. Makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, Bernard. I actually really enjoyed this conversation. Not a surprise, but still. So, very well. Thank you so much for your time, for all your insights. It has been great. I hope we can talk again soon. Okay. And to everyone listening, thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. So, thank you so much, Bernard. I'll see you soon. Okay.
Yes, let's speak soon, and let's do some follow up on LinkedIn, because I've got a few little other bits and pieces I'd like to add into this.
We will
this
for
debate.
sure. Perfect.
Okay.
So now I will just close our conversation, telling everyone to not forget to join our IFM community, to connect with us, to stay updated on the latest developments, and also feel free to use the Slack channels to reach out either to me or Bernard, because we are both on the Slack channel. You can leave us your questions if you want, feedback on this conversation, suggestions for future episodes. The input of everyone is actually invaluable for us, so we can keep delivering content that you like. So just as a final note, remember, the hybrid workplace is a continually evolving landscape. We have been talking about a lot of things will still gonna change from now on. Facilities management plays a pivotal role in its success. So whether you are an FM professional, a business leader, or someone with a keen interest in these dynamics, stay adaptable and stay engaged with the conversation, because there's a lot more coming. So I look forward to having all of you with us in our next episode. Until then, take care. Thank you so much, guys.